So CJ Math students, this is part 2 of notes 3.7, ratios, rates. So it says, write 3 ratios that are equivalent to the given one. So the ratio of right-handed students to left-handed students, 18 to 4. So what's an equivalent ratio? So first of all, we can say, all right, let's write 18 over 4 as a fraction, and let's simplify it. So an equivalent ratio to 18 over 4 would be 9 to 2, right? What's another ratio? We can even break this down all the way down to dividing 9 over 2, right? And figuring out that that's 4.5 right-handed students for every 1 left-handed students. That's a little bit difficult because you can't have 4.5 humans, right? But you could also go higher, right? Like what if you were in a room that had more than these 22 students? What would you expect if it was a equivalent ratio? So you could say 18 over 4 times 2, right? And we would get 36 over 8. So all 3 of those are equivalent ratios to 18 over 4. Basically this one I just simplified, 18 over 4, right? By dividing by 2. This one I said, okay, what's 9 over 2 broken down as a decimal? And I got 4.5 to 1. And this one, sorry, I should have written as 36 to 8. Again, what did I do there? I just did 18 over 4 and I multiplied by 2. Right, all equivalent ratios. So Mr. Locke has 16 homework papers and 14 exit tickets to return. So he's got homework, and we're comparing it to exit tickets. And Miss Boyle has 64 homework papers, homework, and 60 exit tickets. She's comparing again to exit. So we're comparing 2 of the same thing, so we can compare both teachers and see what their rates are. So we'll say Mr. Locke has 16 to 14, and Mrs. Boyle has 64 to 60. For each teacher, write a ratio, which we did, represent the number of homework papers to the number of exit tickets they have to return. Are the ratios equivalent? Basically, again, you can just go to Google Calculator and say, all right, what's 16 divided by 14? We could simplify this fraction and get it down to 8 over 7. We could simplify this fraction, not by 2, but divided by 4. And get it down to 16 over 15, and we could say, all right, who's got a higher ratio, a higher rate? So are the equivalent, basically. So we have 8 over 7. When we divide that, we get 1.14. 1.14, about 1.14, and then 16 divided by 15. You get about 1.06. So I know that, hey, these are not equivalent ratios. And I'm going to write that down. These are not equivalent ratios. And I know that for a couple of reasons. I know that because of the fractions. I know that because of the decimal answers I got. I can see that Mrs. Boyle has a lower ratio of homework to exit tickets to hand out, whereas Mr. Locke has a higher ratio of homework to exit tickets to hand out. And you can write something like that to finish up the lines. All right, number 4. Jonathan's parents told him that for every 5 hours of homework or reading he completes, he will be able to play 3 hours of video games. So what's the 2 things we're comparing here? We're comparing the amount of homework he does to video games. And this is for Jonathan. And then his friend Lucas's parents told their son that he can play 30 minutes of video games basically for every hour of homework or reading time that he completes. All right, so then Lucas, again, we're going to compare homework to video games. So we can compare basically who's got the better deal with his parents, right? If both boys spend the same amount of time on homework and reading this week, which boy gets more time playing video games? How do you know? So we'll say, all right, for Jonathan, his homework to video game ratio was 5 hours, and he gets 3 hours of video games. For Lucas, this is difficult to read, but read it carefully. Their son, he can play 30 minutes for every hour. So he's required to do 1 hour of homework. And now, I'm not going to write a 30 here because this was in minutes, whereas Jonathan's was in hours. So you have to ask yourself, this is crucial, guys. 30 minutes equals how many hours? Well, it doesn't even equal 1 hour because it's 60 minutes per hour. So 30 minutes is equal to a half of an hour. And I could simply write that as 0.5 hours. So that's a really, you got to pay very close attention to that to see, all right, how to write this ratio, because if you wrote down 30 there, you're going to say, oh man, this is crazy. You know, Lucas has got the better deal with his parents by far, but he's not getting to play 30 hours of video games. He's getting to play 30 minutes. So 5 divided by 3 gives us about 1.66 repeated. So for every 1.66 hours of homework, Jonathan gets to play 1 hour of video games. What did I do again? I just did 5 over 3. And what's that give me? It's going to give me my unit rate of 1.66. Here, I almost have, I have, sorry, my fault, 1 divided by 0.5. And I'm going to get 2. Pause, guys. I've thought of a better way to do this, so I'm going to erase this right here. And we can go ahead and say, all right, let's just make Lucas, let's just envision him doing 5 hours of homework. So let's multiply this by 5. And then if I do that, I multiply that by 5. And so Lucas's comparable ratio is 5 to, what's 5 times 0.5? I get 2.5. So if we take a look at this, Jonathan actually has the better deal with homework, because if he does 5 hours of homework, he gets 3 hours of video game, whereas Lucas, if he does 5 hours of homework, he does 2.5 hours of video games. So that's what your response should look like. For the next one, 30 boys tried out for the lacrosse team and 12 were selected. So we're taking out for the, basically doing the tryout versus the selected. And this is for lacrosse, LAX. Of the 40 boys who tried out for football, 18 were selected. So for football, FB, we've got, again, tryout to selected. Are the ratios of the number of students on the team to the number of students trying out the same for both sports? So basically we have 30 to 12 here. Is that the same as 40 to 18? And we could basically break these fractions down, try and simplify them. We'll get 30 over 12 is going to be equal to 2.5 students, basically. 2.5 tryouts per 1 selected. And this is 40 divided by 18 is going to be like 2.22 repeated, right? So for every 2.5 guys that try out, 1 gets selected. For every 2.22 that try out, 1 gets selected. So these are not equivalent ratios. Obviously, they're not the same number. And you'll say something like that in your response. Lastly, Divine is trying to figure out the unit price on a 6-pack of drinks for sale for $2.99. His sister said the price of each drink, so 1 drink in that 6-pack, would cost just over $2. Is she correct? How do you know? First of all, no way is she correct. If each drink in a 6-pack costs $2, let's write this down. If each drink costs $2, then a 6-pack would total 2 times 6, which would be $12. So there's no way. I think what she did is she's mixed up her, what she should do. She should do the price over the quantity. So she should figure out, all right, if it's $2.99 per 6 drinks, sorry, 99, not 96, what's that equal? And I think this answer gives us something like 0.498, or it's about, we could say, 50 cents per drink. All right, that's it for the notes.